All right, welcome back to Prayer of the Barren Womb. We are in part 51 of the Four Rivers of Eden and part 20 of As It Was in the Days of Abraham. We're currently in Genesis chapter 20, looking at the story of Abimelek and trying to understand what Genesis chapter 20 is even doing in the Bible. And what we've uncovered is some of the prophetic the messages that Abimelek is sending to end-time believers, terminal age, household of faith, people of God. Abimelek is telling us something. And if we don't do the warning, if we don't do what Abimelek said, we too are going to be dead men. I developed that fully in some of the earlier videos. But I wanted to take a pause in Genesis chapter 20 right now and do a high-speed pass through the book of Ruth. And a couple of reasons for that. One, we are in the season of Shavuot, and traditionally, the book of Ruth is read as a part of the celebration of Shavuot. And secondly, it turns out that the book of Ruth is just another retelling of Genesis chapter 20, repeating the same message to Gentiles, to the Avimelek nations, the household of faith, that portion of the family of God that recognizes themselves as the Sunday, Easter, Christmas church, is being warned that if we do not exit the gates of Sodom, we'll be saved. Lot is a shadow type, I believe, of end-time, terminal age, household of faith, people of God. Lot and his family were saved as if through a wall of fire. Now, there's different degrees of destruction. Lot's wife, yes, she was behind the door when the angels closed the door and the Sodomites could not get at the family of God. She was behind the door of salvation, just like Noah and his family was behind the door when God closed the door to the ark. So in type and shadow, yes, the household of Lot was saved. It's just that I believe each family member expresses different degrees of sanctification in the process that we're in. Lot's wife, I believe we'll see Lot's wife in heaven. I believe she will have an eternal portion, and I believe that we will meet her, but she will have nothing to offer her king. Lot himself will have greater reward. He will have the hospitality and the kindness and the understandings of monotheism. He was brought up in the household of faith of Abraham, and he embraced those, but he wasn't able to save anyone more than his two daughters. And he had lost family members within the precincts of Sodom and Gomorrah. He lost at least two other daughters and sons-in-law, and we don't know if he lost any children that they may have had. So he was saved, but as if through a wall of fire. He will have eternal portion. And his daughters, they're a mess. I believe we will meet these family members of Lot in the eternal age, and each one of them will have varying degrees of reward in the eternal state, though they themselves will be a part of the eternal kingdom. So this is a very strong message to end-time believers, which I'm thoroughly convinced that we are a part of that terminal generation of believers. Yeshua himself warns in his briefing to his own disciples, he warns them about, as it was in the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Lot, so shall it be at the revelation of the Son of Man, and to remember Lot's wife. I mean, profound warnings that our master is giving to us. So this whole series of As It Was in the Days of Abraham has been a developing and unfolding narrative for me in terms of how do we extract ourselves from that condition and proceed towards the tents of Abraham, because Lot and Abraham had two very different perspectives and experiences of the destruction of Sodom. Lot himself saved as if through a wall of fire. He was right there in the moment. You know, the burning destruction was falling around his head. Abraham, on the other hand, is watching the destruction at a great distance. He's seeing the smoke of destruction rising up like pillars. So I suggest that there's an exit strategy. There's a way for the people, household of faith, to be preserved through the coming destruction that is going to happen to the greater than Sodom and Gomorrah. We are living in that system right now. God is going to judge this system, and you can already feel the winds of judgment beginning to blow. So what is the exit strategy? And I believe that Abimelek tells us how we are to extract ourselves from Sodom and Gomorrah. Turns out Ruth also tells us the same story with a slightly different perspective, and that's what I want to visit right now. But what I want to do is, you may have noticed that there's a different board behind me, and I know you can't see it real good, so I want to zoom in on it and let you take a look at what I have. We'll begin here at the top. You can clearly see that we are still in the four rivers of Eden. The four rivers of Eden are found in Genesis chapter 2, verses 10 through 14. And this has been, even though I'm sidetracked in the teaching of as it was in the days of Abraham, Abraham is a part of the four rivers. My theory that I've suggested is that the first river of life is Adam. His story and his family is found for us in Genesis chapter 1 through 6. And his first world, the world of Adam, is destroyed in the flood. A worldwide judgment event requires a second river of life. And this is Noah's world. His story is found for us in Genesis chapter 6 through 11. And his world, the world of Noah, is ended at the Tower of Babel. It is a worldwide judgment event. No longer is it existential in terms of humanity being wiped out, but what had happened now is that the one world language has been shattered and scattered. And now, as a result of that worldwide judgment, we need to find the new river of life. And this is what I believe is happening in the story of Abraham. This third river of life is being developed for us much more extensively than Genesis chapters 1 through 6 and 6 through 11. The first 11 chapters of the Bible cover, approximately 2,000 years of human history. The third river of life is being evaluated very closely in the single life of Abraham. And so this is very suggestive that the life of Abraham covers 13 chapters. And what I did is I took Abraham's storyline and I put a timeline for Abraham. His story begins here in Genesis chapter 12. And what we find is that the 13 chapters from Genesis 12 to 25 are the story of Abraham, with one anomalous exception, and that would be Genesis chapter 19, which is the story of Lot. It's like we have this hiccup in the story of Abraham to tell us the story of Lot. And ultimately, Lot brings forth the nation of Moab and Ammon. I focused on Moab for a particular reason. But if we move forward through the timeline for Isaac, we find that his story actually, he's born to Sarah in Genesis chapter 21, but he's not a major player in the Genesis narrative. His story is just kind of glossed over. And then we come to Jacob and Esau, the children of Isaac. And then the Jacob storyline predominates pretty much for the rest of the book of Genesis, focusing primarily on Joseph. Joseph is another huge storyline that takes up a lot of real estate in the book of Genesis. And then he too has this hiccup. He's got this hiccup in Genesis 38 of Judah and Tamar, and we're looking at primarily another pair of twins, but Perez here is the royal bloodline. Perez is the child through whom the Messianic dynasty will arrive. Now, if we move, fast forward through a lot of time, we come to Numbers 25, and what we find is the bloodline of Moab and the children of Israel once again meet up here in Numbers chapter 25. They're entangled. These two bloodlines of Moab and Perez are entangled throughout history. The entanglement happens again for us in the book of Ruth. And the result of the book of Ruth, spoiler alert, is that she will be the great-grandmother of King David. So this is a very interesting storyline. What does the entanglement of these two bloodlines mean? So fascinating. Okay, so that's my board that I've developed for this teaching, and hopefully we'll get through it in short order. Okay. The power of God to redeem these two storylines and bring them together to form the Messianic bloodline is nothing short of amazing. It's possible I might have to do another teaching. There's just too much here between the parallels between Lot and his daughters. And Judah and Tamar are astonishing. I'd encourage a closer look. Take a look at the themes of Genesis 19 and the themes of Genesis 38. And you will find parallel after parallel. You'll find, astonishingly, you'll find incest in both storylines. Lot and his daughters, Lot impregnating his daughters, Judah impregnating his daughter-in-law. That's icky. You'll find male passivity or male lust combined with female initiation and noble purposes. The daughters of Lot were convinced that they were the last humans on earth and that they must go into their father and make him drunk. So they deceive their father. They conceive of their father with drunkenness. Tamar, she deceives Judah, her father-in-law, and causes Judah, she initiates this plan. The daughters initiated the plan. Lot is unaware and he's drunk. Judah is filled with lust and he's just following the impulses of his flesh. But he impregnates Tamar. So you find noble purposes in Tamar. She is doing this for the benefit of her dead husband. She is trying to get a Yibum child to perpetuate the line of her husband. Er is dead. Judah has promised Tamar on several occasions that the next son in line will go into Tamar and preserve the bloodline of Er. Onan rejects that responsibility. We don't find any further, Shelah is another story. Finally, it's Judah himself that goes into Tamar and performs Yibum, the perpetuating of his son's name himself, though he does it through deception. So these guys are passive. The women are taking action and initiating for noble purposes. So these two storylines have theme after theme. The result of this is two children, two male children. The result of this is two male children. So parallel after parallel after parallel is coming forward for us. And it's these two bloodlines of Moab and Perez that are entangled. These horrible, icky stories lead to Yeshua Messiah, the bloodline of King David. So It's fascinating. And these same themes come forward for us in the book of Ruth, but in a redemptive way, not in a icky way. Okay, let's get into it. Yeah, there's a lot here. Okay, let's... All right. Oh yeah, let's touch real quickly on Numbers 25. Let's see this, one more entanglement before we get to the book of Ruth. All right, so the children of Israel have been redeemed from the land of Egypt, and they are now making progress towards the promised land. The king of Moab sees a real problem with the children of Israel coming into his land. They're hordes. There's hordes of people, and he's worried for his kingdom. Tries to get this false prophet, Balaam, to curse the children of Israel. God does not allow it. Speaks through Balaam, this false prophet, true prophecies that are read every Shabbat to this very day. The true prophecies of a false prophet are a part of the Sabbath service. So it's very interesting. But finally, what Balaam does is he counsels the king, well, since there's no iniquity in Israel and I can't curse them, here's what you do. You get them to sin. Then you use the judgment of God upon the Israelites. Let God do the dirty work. And what he counsels Balak, the king, to do is found here in Numbers chapter 25. Now, Israel remained in Acacia Grove, and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. And they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel was joined to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. And so we find this curious connection again in Numbers 25 with the people of Moab. Do not show kindness to the children of Israel in terms of offering them bread, water, and support for their journey. Instead, what they offer them is private kindness, the kind of kindness that only should be displayed between a husband and his wife, is what Moab provides the children of Israel. Sexual sin and fornication and idolatry. This is what Moab offers the household of faith in Numbers 25. So there's this interesting pinch point right here. And so they're at odds with one another. In fact, the Lord goes on to say that no child of Moab will come into the household of faith down to 10 generations. And this is very interesting. Ruth doesn't make it to 10 generations, but she's from Moab. She's a Moabite woman, and she comes into the household of faith after 8 generations. So what's that? I think it's mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. But boy, taking rabbit trail after rabbit trail on this. All right. Let's take a look at the parallels between the story of Ruth and Genesis chapter 20. I'm going to put a little spike here. Immediately following Lot is Avimelek. And that happens in Genesis 20. The parallels between Avimelek and Ruth are really quite remarkable. In both stories, a woman is displaced from her land of inheritance. In the story of Avimelek, it's Sarah. Sarah is displaced and brought into the household of Avimelek. In the book of Ruth, Naomi is displaced from the land of her inheritance. She leaves Bethlehem, or Bethlehem as we call it. But what's interesting is that this displacement of the women happens as a result of the self-interest, the decisions of self-interest of their husbands. Sarah is lost to Abimelech through the self-interest of Abraham. Tell everybody we meet, Sarah, that you're my sister, and that way it will go well for me. Okay? So Sarah is lost to Abimelech because of a bad decision of self-interest of Abraham. Naomi is lost to the Moabites through the self-interest of her husband, not Avimelek, but Elimelech. Elimelech means God is king. Avimelech means father is king. Interesting but subtle parallel. Not as strong as some of the other parallels, but I think that there's a resonance there. Naomi, the Elimelech's self-interest was that Bethlehem was experiencing famine, and he was one of the wealthiest and most influential men of Bethlehem. And instead of ministering out of his resources to help those who are starving and impoverished, he decides to just leave. And he's going to go to Moab and just wait this thing out. This decision displeases God. Now, Sarah, another parallel between Sarah and Naomi reversal, is that Sarah, of course, is in a condition of barrenness. Naomi is in a condition of fruitfulness. She has a husband and she has 2 sons. So her womb has been productive, and she will be able to continue. Through her womb, the name of her husband will continue through her 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, which are interesting names. Disease and destruction. Interesting names for 2 sons. Anyhow, because of this self-interest decision of Elimelech, he dies as well as his 2 sons. But before they die, they both take wives of the Moabite nation, which is against Torah. They're not allowed to take wives of the Moabites up to 10 generations. They haven't gotten to that point yet in the 10-generational curse against Moab. So in violation of Torah, Mahlon and Chilion both marry daughters of Moab. The 2 daughters, Mahlon marries Ruth, and Chilion marries Orpah. So we have barrenness of Sarah being brought into the household of Abimelech, but we have the fruitfulness of Naomi being rendered barren as a result of going to Moab. So you find these parallels, but in reverse in some of these stories. Now, the barrenness of these 2 women, Sarah, and the barrenness of Naomi, are both reversed as a result of Gentiles walking in righteousness, walking in obedience. And this is where we see Abimelech, his barrenness, the barrenness that God put upon Abimelech, is lifted when he restores Sarah to Abraham. And we've already talked about the prophetic typological shadow that indicates. Naomi, on the other hand, is rendered barren through these bad decisions, but her barrenness, Naomi's barrenness, is lifted off of her by the obedience of Ruth. And you'll be going, well, how does Naomi's barrenness lifted off of Ruth? We'll take a look at that in Ruth chapter 4. So you have barrenness and reversal of barrenness, both taking place in both Genesis 20 and in the book of Ruth as a result of Gentile obedience. And as a result of Gentile obedience and barrenness being lifted, 2 very special children are born. In Genesis 20 and actually 21, she conceives in Genesis 21, and her child is Isaac, the child of promise, the promised one of Abraham. In Ruth, the promised child is Obed. Obed begets Jesse. Jesse begets David, and the Davidic dynasty is established through the bloodline of Moab and the bloodline of Perez. Boaz is a child of the kingly line of Perez. And you get that genealogy listed for you in the book of Ruth. So there's so much meditation to be done here. You can just kind of hang out and think on this. But one of the things that I want to bring forward for us before this video goes too long is the parallels between the obedience of Ruth and the obedience of Avimelek. Two Gentiles, one man, one woman, coming back to the household of faith. Avimelek surrenders Sarah back to Abraham. This is a picture and a shadow of what Avimelek nations, fathers, king nations, must surrender their understanding of the covenant to the ones who were assigned to understand the covenant. Southern House has been assigned by God to preserve an understanding of the covenant. Clueless Gentiles have no idea. We've redefined what discipleship of the Jewish Messiah looks like to be thoroughly paganized. Ruth parallels exactly Avimelek. Let's take a look at her words, the words of Ruth preserved for us. And I want to ask a question. Do you see the church speaking the words of Ruth in any way, shape, or form? Okay, in Ruth chapter 1, Naomi, her husband, she's been widowed, and she's been stricken with grief by the death and the loss of not only her husband, but her two sons. Mahlon and Chilion are both dead now. Ruth has been prevented from conception, so she too is a beautiful and barren woman. And in the exact likeness and pattern of Tamar, Ruth is a beautiful, but she is not allowed to conceive from Mahlon. So Ruth, or Naomi now, is going back to her homeland, the land of her inheritance, back to Bethlehem. And she's telling her daughters, may God bless you. Go back to your families. Find husbands for yourselves. And Naomi makes this very interesting comment, which if you don't understand Yibam will make no sense to you at all. She says to their daughters, "The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "Surely we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands?" What is Naomi talking about here? Are there still sons in my womb? What is everybody thinking? What are the daughters thinking? They're thinking of Yibam, the means by which the legacy of their dead husbands can be continued through a brother. If Naomi gives birth to another son, this son could theoretically mature to adulthood and become the wife of either Ruth or Orpah. And through the child that Naomi's third son would have with either Ruth or Orpah, the name of Mahlon or Chilion could be preserved, and the legacy of Elimelech could continue. I know that's a lot. Hit rewind, go back through what I just said, and listen to it a couple times. You'll get it. And are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should have a hope, and if I should have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons, would you wait for them till they are grown? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. And they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Ruth clung to her. And Naomi says to Ruth, for the third time, she's trying to get Ruth, go back. There's no hope for you here. And she said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, And this is what I want you to listen for. In any way, shape, or form has the church said this about the Jewish Southern House brethren, the household of faith, the family of God? Ruth says to Naomi, "Entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death separates you from me." Northern House has pretty much said the exact opposite of Ruth's beautiful declaration of love and commitment to Naomi. A Gentile woman speaking to a Jewish woman. And you heard what I just said. What has the Northern House, the Gentile nations of the world, expressed towards Southern House? Pretty much the opposite. Where you go, I will not go. Where you lodge, I will not lodge. Your people shall not be my people. Your people are cursed of God. My people are blessed of God. And where you die, I will die. No, I'm not going to die where you die. In fact, I'm going to kill you. I will not be buried where, and the Lord does do so to me and more also. Let me read to you. And this, any motivated 12-year-old kid in Wikipedia can find the anti-Semitism rampant in the foundations, in the root system of Christianity. It began early and happened fast. Okay, now Marcion of Sinope is not a perfect example, but let me just read to you what I found. In the early 2nd century AD, the heretic Marcion of Sinope, from 85 to 160 AD, declared that the Jewish God was a different God, inferior to the Christian one, and rejected the Jewish scriptures as a product of a lesser deity. Marcion's teachings were extremely popular, rejected Judaism not only as an incomplete revelation, but as a false one as well. But at the same time allowed less blame to be placed on the Jews personally for having not recognized Jesus, since in Marcion's worldview, Jesus was not sent by the lesser Jewish God, but by the supreme Christian God, whom the Jews had no reason to recognize. In combating Marcion, Orthodox apologists conceded that Judaism was incomplete and an inferior religion to Christianity. Okay, even though Marcion was deemed a heretic by the early church, his views of anti-Semitism were extremely popular. It wasn't anti-Semitism that was rejected. It was his ideas that we need our own Bible. And extracting the Jewish scriptures from the Christian Bible was Marcion's aim. He wanted to have a Bible that consisted of, I believe, 12 books. Like the Gospel of John and most of the letters of Paul, as long as they weren't too Jewish. So that was Marcion very early on. I mean, just 15 years after the destruction of the temple, Marcion is making waves. And his waves, even though he's rejected as a heretic, continue to this day. He shaped what became, he was part of the root system of Christianity. Moving forward to a guy named Tertullian. Now, you know, if you've done any looking into church history, these names will be familiar to you. These guys are the guys that are the root system of what became Christianity, and this is their belief, their feeling, their sentiment, their doctrinal position towards the family of God, Southern House. Southern House is part of the family of God and can never be anything else, anything less. Tertullian. The church father Tertullian from 155 to 240 AD had a particularly intense personal dislike toward the Jews and argued that the Gentiles had been chosen by God to replace the Jews because they were worthier and more honorable. Another one, Origen of Alexandria, was more knowledgeable about Judaism than any other church fathers. He had studied the Hebrew, met Rabbi Hillel the Younger, and consulted and debated with Jewish scholars, and had been influenced by the allegorical interpretations of Philo of Alexandria. Now, Origen defended the canonicity of the Hebrew Bible and defended the Jews of the past as having been chosen by God for their merits. Nonetheless, he condemned contemporary Jews for not understanding their own law, insisted that the Christians were the true Israel, and blamed the Jews for the death of Christ. You can see mixture of truth and error. Hippolytus of Rome, 170 to 235, wrote that the Jews had been darkened in the eyes of their soul with a darkness utter and everlasting. Augustine, perhaps probably one of the most influential builders of what became Christianity. He is a part of the Sunday, Easter, Christmas system, religious system. Augustine is a major root system for Christianity. Powerful man, intellectual, well-written, just a scholarly man, and incredibly political and influential. Had a profound impact on you. If you're listening to me and you are still in a Sunday, Easter, Christmas system of worship, Augustine is influencing your life. Okay? Augustine, here's what he has to say. Augustine of Hippo argued that the Jews should be left alive and suffering as a perpetual reminder of the murder of Christ. Like his anti-Jewish teacher, Ambrose of Milan, he defined Jews as a special subset of those damned to hell, as witness people. He sanctified collective punishment for the Jewish deicide and enslavement of Jews to Catholics. Quote, "Not by bodily death shall the ungodly race of carnal Jews perish. Scatter them abroad and take away their strength and bring them down, O Lord." There's more. There's John Chrysostom. There's Jerome. I don't want to spend all my time with the anti-Semitic rhetoric of the root system of the Sunday, Easter, Christmas church. But it's there, and it is shaping our lives. It shaped me. It shaped my life. And it caused me to believe that I'm a Christian. They're the Jews. They're a separate and distinct set of people. That there's a prophetic destiny for Christians, and there's a different prophetic destiny for the Jews. Never the twain shall meet. I believed early on in my Christian life that I was going to go up in a 7-year, a pre-tribulational rapture and watch from, the mezzanine as God beat the crap out of the Jews until they realized how much he loved them. I'm no longer a pre-tribulationalist. Anybody can find this. It's so simple to find. But evaluate what I just read to you with the statements of Ruth. "Entreat me not to leave you, nor turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death separates you from me." Ruth is the pattern we should be following, not Augustine. Avimelek is the pattern we should be following. Not Tertullian, not, John Chrysostom. And if we do not surrender back to Abraham, the Sabbath bridal covenant, we're dead men. That's the prophecy. You're a dead man. So Ruth is just another retelling of the same storyline. How should Gentiles proceed with their faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Should we build something brand new and completely redefine it with Mystery Babylon religious practices, just with a thin veneer of Christianity over the top? Or should we repent, turn from our sins, call out to God for mercy and forgiveness for our arrogance and presumption that we could rewrite the Torah, we could do away with it, that we could have a paganized version of Jesus? Both Ruth and Avimelek are telling us the way back. And if we do not do this, we're dead men. So I saw an incredible parallel. Let me see where I'm losing my way. Let me see what else I have before now. Yeah, one final verse. So Ruth goes back with Naomi to Bethlehem, house of bread, Bethlehem. She begins to glean and gather in the fields of Boaz. She's recognized as a virtuous woman, but she's having to receive instruction from a Jewish woman to participate in the kingdom. Here's what Naomi says to her. And Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now Boaz, whose young woman you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Therefore wash yourself, anoint yourself, put on your best garment, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he is finished eating and drinking. Then it shall be when he lies down, you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do." And Ruth said to Naomi, "All that you say I will do." Ruth, a Gentile woman who does not understand the ways of the kingdom, says to a Jewish woman, "All that you say to me I will do." This is what Avimelek did when he surrendered Sabbath bridal covenant back to her rightful owner, to those who were assigned by God to keep the understanding of Torah. So this is getting long, and I don't want to do the super long videos, but you can see the clear parallels between Ruth and Abimelech. And the pattern clearly defines for us what Gentiles, our perspective, how we should be interacting with our Jewish brethren, with Southern House. There's no plan of God where the good shepherd leaves behind any one of his sheep. We've loved that verse in the Northern House. You know, the Lord is our shepherd, the good shepherd, Jesus the shepherd, that he has come to seek and to save that which is lost, that he has found our souls and redeemed us and brought us in to the household of faith. Do you think he's going to do any less for Judah, his own bloodline relatives in the flesh? Do you think he's going to leave Jews behind? That's unthinkable. Yet that's what the church has thought forever. It's unthinkable, and it's a lie. We've built our house upon lies, this rotten foundation of dry rot and termites. And everything that we've built on that foundation is going to crumble. It's going to come down. So that's my encouragement to you. I hope you reflect deeply upon the stories of Abimelech and Ruth and their parallels. Their parallels are clearly, they're the same story. They're the same message. I hope you consider deeply that message, the message of repentance and the path out of Sodom to the tents of Abraham. May Yahovah bless you and keep you. May Yahovah cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of Yeshua, amen. Thank you for your time. I hope you'll continue on this journey with me into the next video.